My dad looked me in the eye and said, "Only your brother makes us proud." I just calmly replied, "He also makes you carry his mountain of debt from his failing business." Dinner went cold after that. I grew up in a 2-story colonial outside Dayton, Ohio. The family photos on the staircase told you everything. Tyler's senior portrait was in a gold frame. Mine was in a black plastic one from Target. Maybe nobody planned it that way. Or maybe they did. I stopped trying to figure it out around age 14. Tyler is 4 years older than me. Growing up, he was the one my parents introduced first at every cookout, church event, and school function. "This is Tyler. He's on the student council." Then came a pause. "And this is Ethan." That was it. My dad, Michael, was a middle manager at a paper distribution company for 31 years. In his mind, Tyler was going to break the cycle and do something big. My mom, Patricia, backed that belief with every spare dollar and every ounce of attention. When Tyler needed a car for college, they co-signed a lease. When I needed a car for work, Dad told me to check Craigslist. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because you need to understand the math of my family. Tyler was the investment. I was the emergency fund nobody planned to use. The one person who never treated me that way was Grandpa Walt, Dad's father, a retired plumber, 84 years old, still sharp as a box cutter. He gave me my first real set of tools when I was 12, channel locks, a pipe wrench, and a voltage tester. He looked at me and said, "You've got hands that want to work, kid. Don't let anybody talk you out of that." I held on to those words like a life raft. I didn't go to college. Tyler earned a business degree from Ohio State. I earned my EPA 68 certification through a 6-month trade program and started pulling copper lines in commercial buildings when I was 19. My parents treated it like a funeral. Mum once asked Dad, thinking I couldn't hear, "What am I supposed to tell the Hendersons their son was pre-med?" I moved out at 18, rented a room above a laundromat in Kataring, and started working for Comfort Systems. I was the youngest guy on every crew. I got the worst calls, showed up early, stayed late, kept my mouth shut, and watched everything. By 23, I had my contractor's license. By 25, I started Barrett Mechanical LLC. For the first 2 years, it was just me, a used service van, and a cheap laptop running QuickBooks. I started with residential work, then picked up small commercial jobs. I underbid everyone, delivered clean work, never missed a deadline, and eventually people started calling me instead of the other way around. While I was doing that, Tyler was on his 3rd career pivot. First came a clothing brand that never got past an Instagram page, then crypto consulting, which mostly meant a Discord server and a ring light. Then, about a year and a half ago, he decided to become a real estate mogul. To get him started, Dad co-signed a $40,000 loan for licensing fees, a website, marketing materials, professional headshot, a new wardrobe, and what Tyler called operating capital. Mom mentioned it casually at Thanksgiving. "Your father's helping Tyler get set up. Isn't that exciting?" I nodded and kept eating. 18 months later, Tyler had closed exactly 0 deals. He had a polished website, gold foil business cards, and a $40,000 loan that was 3 months behind on payments. I knew because Dad called me 11 days before the family reunion. He almost never called. "Ethan, you got a minute?" he asked. After asking about work, the weather, and whether I was eating okay, he finally said, "Your brother's going through a rough patch. He's behind on some payments and the bank's calling. I was wondering if maybe you could help him out." "How?" I asked. "Maybe cover a couple of months of payments. He's got some deals in the pipeline." I leaned back in my chair. "Dad, I'm not covering Tyler's loan payments." After a long silence, he said quietly, "Ethan, I co-signed that loan. I understand, but if Tyler wants to work for me, I'll start him at $20 an hour. I need guys." The silence that followed had weight. "I'll talk to him," Dad finally said before hanging up. Tyler never called. 11 days later, I pulled into Grandpa Walt's property for the annual family reunion in my 2009 Ford F250. It had over 200,000 miles on it. The passenger mirror was held on with a bracket I'd fabricated myself. The tailgate was dented, the bed scratched up, and a toolbox permanently bolted in the back. It was also completely paid off, maintained to spec, and had never left me stranded. I parked beside Tyler's white BMW, the one he'd bought 8 months earlier. Grandpa's place sat on 3 acres outside Centerville with a farmhouse, a detached garage, and a duplex he'd owned since 1979. Every July, the family gathered there for folding tables, coolers, lawn chairs, horseshoes, and barbecue. I grabbed the potato salad I'd made and headed toward the backyard. Claire was standing near the driveway with 2 of our cousins, holding a beer and staring at my truck. Before I even got 30 feet away, he called out loud enough for everyone around to hear. "Ethan, seriously? You're still driving that thing? Every time you pull up, I think you're the landscaping guy." My cousins laughed. Dad looked over from the grill, then quickly turned his eyes away. Tira took another drink, looked me over from my work boots to my Carhartt shirt, and smiled. "So, what have you been doing lately, little brother?" Everyone in the yard turned toward me. I placed the potato salad on the closest folding table, put my hands in my pockets, and answered calmly. "I just signed a contract to retrofit the HVAC systems for the new St. Elizabeth Medical Center building in Kettering. It's a $2.3 million job. We're starting in September." His expression didn't change immediately. For a second, he just froze, like his brain was trying to catch up with the words he had just heard. Then he laughed, but nobody else followed. "Come on. $2.3 million for what? Fixing air conditioners. Commercial HVAC, I said. Chillers, air handlers, rooftop units, ductwork, and building automation systems. It's a 14-month project, and I've got a crew of 11 people working on it." Behind me, I heard Grandpa Walt make a sound somewhere between a cough and a laugh. When I turned around, he was wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, looking at me like I had just told him he won the lottery. $2.3 million, he repeated quietly. Then he looked over at Dad. "You hear that, Michael?" Dad heard him. He was standing at the grill with a pair of tongs in his hand, and I watched the color slowly disappear from his face. He didn't say anything. He just stared at me for a few seconds before looking back down at the burgers like they suddenly needed his full attention. 11 days earlier, Dad had called me and asked if I could help cover Tyler's loan payments, the same Tyler who still hadn't closed a single deal. Standing there behind the grill, Dad finally understood that the son he treated like a backup option had landed a $2.3 million commercial contract, while his golden child couldn't even sell a studio apartment. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I didn't throw it in anyone's face. I just picked up the potato salad and carried it over to the food table. "Hi, Mum." She hugged me, but I could tell she had heard everything. The rest of the afternoon went the way family gatherings usually go after something uncomfortable happens. People started trying too hard to act normal. Uncle Kevin came over and asked me about the hospital project. Cousin Rachel quietly bumped my fist when nobody was paying attention. My aunt told me she was proud of me, something she had never said before. Tyler disappeared for almost 40 minutes. When he came back, he stayed close to Mom and never looked my way again. I didn't go to the reunion trying to embarrass anybody. I honestly didn't. I was planning to say business was going well and leave it at that. But when someone makes you the joke in front of your entire family, sometimes the truth ends up speaking for itself. That evening, after everyone else had left, I stayed behind to help Grandpa clean up. Uncle Kevin carried the folding chairs into the garage, while Grandpa and I sat outside, watching fireflies move across the field. The cicadas kept buzzing non-stop in the July heat. "Sit down, Ethan," Grandpa said, while taking a sip of sweet tea. I pulled a chair over beside him. "You know, I worked as a plumber for 42 years. "Yes, sir." "You know what people called me when I was your age? A pipe jockey. Your grandmother's family didn't want her marrying me because I worked with my hands." He took another sip and pointed toward the duplex behind the farmhouse. "I bought that place in 1979 with cash I saved crawling under houses for 15 years. No loan, no cosigner, just hard work. I stayed quiet because I knew Grandpa wasn't finished. Your dad never understood that. He wanted the office, the title, and the name on the door. There's nothing wrong with wanting that, but he raised Tyler the same way." Then he looked straight at me. "You turned out more like me, kid, and I need you to know something. I'm going to make sure that counts for something permanent." He paused for a moment. "Come by tomorrow morning around 9. We need to talk." I nodded. "I'll be here." When I got back to my apartment that night, I sat in my truck for almost 10 minutes thinking about everything that happened at the reunion. Tyler's face, Dad's silence, and whatever Grandpa meant by what he said. Then my phone buzzed. It was Dad. "Ethan, we need to talk about your brother's situation. The bank sent a collections warning. Call me." I stared at the message, put my phone back in my pocket, and went inside. Falling asleep wasn't easy. My mind kept replaying one small moment from the reunion that nobody else seemed to notice. When I announced the hospital contract, Mom reached over and squeezed Tyler's arm. Not mine. His. Even when something good happened for me, he was still the one everyone wanted to comfort. Around midnight, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Tyler. "Hey man, congratulations on the contract. Seriously, that's huge." For a second, I almost believed he meant it. Then another message came through. "Dad mentioned you might be able to help with something. Want to grab lunch this week?" There it was. The congratulations were only a way to get to what he really wanted. I plugged my phone in, turned off the light, and waited for morning. The next day I arrived at Grandpa Walt's house just before 9. He was already on the porch with coffee, wearing his old Carhartt jacket, even though it was warm outside. He handed me a mug and pointed to the porch swing. "I had my attorney update my estate plan 6 weeks ago," he said. Then he got straight to the point. "I'm leaving the duplex to you." I set my coffee down because I almost dropped it. The duplex is paid off. No mortgage. The tenants have been there 11 years, they pay $1,200 a month, and they never miss. It was appraised at $280,000 last spring. I didn't know what to say. Grandpa looked across the field and continued. "Your dad has always expected that property when I'm gone. He never said it directly, but I know. He's talked about it with Kevin and his accountant. I think he plans to sell it to fix whatever mess Tyler creates." He looked at his hands. "I didn't build that place so your father could sell it to rescue a grown man who won't work. I built it with these hands." His hands were rough and scarred from decades of labor. "I'm giving it to the person in this family who understands what hard work means." I sat there quietly while my coffee got cold. Nobody knows. Not your dad, your mom, or Tyler. The documents are already updated. When the time comes, it's done. I wanted you to hear it from me first. I drove home thinking about my family and what this would change. For the next 6 weeks, I kept doing what I always did. I worked, ran my business, and took care of my crew and customers. I never mentioned the duplex. Grandpa asked me to keep it private, and I also wanted to see how everyone acted while they still thought nothing had changed. They still saw me as Ethan, the guy who fixed air conditioners. People show their true selves when they think the situation is still in their favor. 3 days after the reunion, Dad called. "Ethan, we need to figure this out. The bank is threatening collections on Tyler's loan. If that happens, it hurts my credit." "So what are we going to do?" he asked. I noticed that word. We. Not what Tyler was going to do. Not what Dad was going to do since he co-signed. "I already told you, Tyler can work for me. $22 an hour, full benefits after 90 days. He's not doing manual labor, he has a degree." "Then I don't know what to tell you." 2 days later, Tyler texted me. "I know we haven't always been close, but I'm dealing with something serious. Can we talk?" I was in a meeting for the hospital project, so I didn't answer right away. 3 hours later, he wrote, "Guess not. Good to know where I stand." I replied that I was busy and asked what was going on. He called immediately. "The real estate market is terrible. I have leads, but nothing is closing, and this loan is killing me." "How much do you owe?" "About $32,000 on the principal, plus missed payments. What happened to the original $40,000? He hesitated. "Marketing, website, office expenses." "Office expenses?" "A co-working desk." "For how long?" "About 10 months. I did the math. $8,000 on a shared desk. "Ethan, I don't need an audit. I need help." "I already offered you a job." "I'm not crawling through ductwork." "Then we don't have anything else to discuss." After a pause, he said, "Dad thinks you could cover a few months of payments." "Dad said that?" "Must be nice having a $2.3 million contract and telling your own brother no." That was the real Tyler showing up. "That contract is revenue, not profit," I told him. "It pays for workers, equipment, materials, insurance, and bonding. I run a business. I'm not the family bank." He muttered something and hung up. I saved the messages and screenshots because I knew how my family worked. One day, they might say I abandoned my brother, and I wanted proof of what really happened. The weeks passed. I focused on the hospital project, hired 2 new technicians, and kept moving forward. Meanwhile, Rachel would occasionally text me updates, but she never made it sound like she was spreading rumors. She kept it simple. Your mom is really worried about the loan. Tyler told Aunt Susan that you refused to help him. Then she sent another message that bothered me even more. Dad had asked Uncle Kevin for money, and Kevin said no. Uncle Kevin was not rich, so the fact that Dad was already turning to his own brother showed me things were much worse than he admitted. Rachel ended one message by saying, "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Tyler needs to grow up." I appreciated hearing that, but it didn't change the fact that my family was hearing a completely different version of the story. In their version, Tyler was the hard-working businessman trying to make it, and I was the selfish brother sitting on a $2.3 million contract who refused to help his own family. For now, I let them believe whatever they wanted. Near the end of August, Mom texted me. She almost never messaged me directly unless it was a holiday, or she wanted to send me a picture of her garden. This time, all she wrote was, "Ethan, can you call me when you have a chance?" I called her from my truck after work. "Hi, honey," she said. "I don't want to get involved in the middle of this, but your father is really struggling with Tyler's loan. He can't sleep, and his blood pressure is getting worse. I'm worried about him." "I'm sorry to hear that, Mom. But Tyler is the one responsible for the loan. He's trying, Ethan. He really is. He has a couple of opportunities that might close soon, but your father can't keep making those payments. Mom, I already offered Tyler a real job with a steady paycheck. He turned it down." She paused. "Honey, he went to college. He can't just go work construction." "It's not construction. It's commercial HVAC. I don't understand why my trade school education is somehow considered less valuable than his degree." She sighed. "I just think family should help family." "I agree. That's why I offered him a job." After a long silence, she quietly said, "You sound just like your grandfather." I didn't think she meant it as a compliment, but I decided to take it that way. Nothing changed. September came, and my crew started the hospital project. The first stage was removing old mechanical systems, coordinating with other contractors, and fixing problems that came up from morning until late afternoon. In the middle of all that, Grandpa called me. "How's the hospital job going?" "Good, we're right on schedule." "Good, I'm proud of you." He paused before continuing. "I'm having the family over for dinner on the 28th. Everyone will be there." "What's the occasion?" There was a short silence. "It's time." I knew exactly what he meant. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I've been sure for 6 months. I'm 84 years old, Ethan. I'm not waiting around for the perfect moment. Just be there. This is mine to handle." After we hung up, I sat in my truck outside the job site and thought about what was coming. Dad, already struggling because of Tyler's debt, was about to find out that the duplex he expected to receive would be going to me instead. Tyler was about to learn that the property he probably believed would eventually save him was never going to be his. And I was about to become the villain in their story simply because my success proved they had spent years believing in the wrong person. The 3 weeks before Grandpa's dinner passed quietly. Dad stopped calling, Tyler stopped texting. Even Mum became quiet. I started wondering if they had finally accepted things. Then Rachel sent me a message. "Just a heads up. Your dad says Tyler has a big commercial property deal closing any day now. He says it will fix everything." I wanted to believe it, but I had been hearing about Tyler's upcoming deals for 18 months. None of them ever happened. I replied, "I hope it's real this time." Rachel answered, "Me too." About 2 weeks before the dinner, Dad showed up at my shop without warning. One of my employees came into my office and said, "There's a guy outside asking for you." I walked out and saw Dad standing in the parking lot, looking at my service vans, my shop, and the Barrett Mechanical sign like he was seeing it all for the first time. "Can we talk inside?" he asked. My office wasn't anything fancy. Just a desk, a filing cabinet, a whiteboard covered with the hospital schedule, and my contractor's license hanging on the wall. Dad sat across from me and rested his hands on his knees. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I've been putting too much pressure on you about Tyler. That wasn't fair. You've built something real here, and I haven't given you the credit you deserve." I appreciate that, I said. But you need to understand where I'm coming from. He leaned forward. If that loan goes into collections, my credit is destroyed. Your mother and I are planning to refinance the house next year. If my score drops, we could lose that option. For the first time, I believed him. He wasn't trying to manipulate me. He was genuinely scared. I felt that old instinct to fix problems for people who had never done the same for me. What exactly are you asking me to do? I asked. I'm not asking you to pay the loan, he said. I'm asking you to co-sign a refinance. We combine the debt, lower the payments, and Tyler pays it off when his commission comes through. I looked at him. So you want me to put my name on Tyler's debt, even if it's only temporary? What happens if the deal doesn't close? I asked. It will, Dad replied. But what if it doesn't? This time, he had no answer. I took a breath and finally said, I can't do that, Dad. My business depends on my bonding capacity. Taking on extra debt could hurt my ability to get future contracts. I'm not putting my company at risk. He slowly nodded. He didn't argue or try to fight me on it. He just stood up, looked around my office one more time and said, You've done well, Ethan. Then he walked out. I stayed there for a long time after he left. It hurt seeing my father that scared, especially knowing I technically had the ability to help. But I also knew the truth. If I signed those papers, Tyler's debt would become my responsibility. The only thing changing would be the name attached to it. That night, Tyler sent me the longest message I had ever gotten from him. He admitted he had been arrogant. He apologized for making fun of my truck. He said he wished we had been closer growing up and that he respected me more than I probably realized. But near the end of the message, I saw the real reason he reached out. I know Dad mentioned refinancing. I'd never ask you to risk your business. But if there's any way you can help us figure this out, even if it's just advice, I'd appreciate it. That one word stood out to me. Us. The debt was everyone's problem. But the success had always belonged only to Tyler. I replied with one sentence, I hope the deal works out. Good luck. He never responded. 2 days before Grandpa's dinner, Rachel called me. Have you talked to Grandpa lately? Not this week. Why? Uncle Kevin said Grandpa specifically told everyone they had to be there, like it wasn't optional. Mom thinks it's about his health. He's not sick. How do you know? I hesitated just long enough for her to notice. I just know Grandpa. She didn't push, but I could tell she realized I knew more than I was saying. The morning of the 28th, I woke up before sunrise. I drank my coffee, checked my emails, reviewed the hospital project work orders, and tried to keep my normal routine. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking completely. I drove to Grandpa's house early. He was already in the kitchen making pot roast, and the whole house smelled like garlic and rosemary. You're early, he said. Couldn't sleep, I admitted. He looked at me over his glasses. Nervous? I nodded. He placed the roast back into the oven. I've been waiting a long time to do this. Honestly, I should have done it years ago. Together, we set the table for 8 people. Grandpa, me, Mom, Dad, Tyler, Uncle Kevin, Aunt Susan, and Rachel. Everyone arrived around 5. During dinner, the conversation stayed safe. We talked about the weather, work, and retirement. Nobody mentioned the loan or my company. It felt like everyone knew something important was coming, but nobody knew exactly what it was. When dinner was finished, Grandpa folded his napkin, placed it beside his plate, and looked around the table. I asked all of you here because I have something to say, and I only want to say it once. The room became completely quiet. Grandpa looked at each person before speaking. I updated my estate plan, he said calmly. The house and land will remain in a trust, but the duplex is going to Ethan. Nobody said a word. Dad's fork slipped from his hand and hit the plate. Mom stared at Grandpa like she couldn't believe what she had heard. Geller looked at me with a confused expression like his mind couldn't process it. Uncle Kevin finally broke the silence. Well, I guess that settles it. Dad finally spoke. Dad, can we talk about this privately? Grandpa shook his head. No. I wanted everyone here because I'm only explaining this once. There won't be phone calls afterward or different versions of the story. This is my decision. Dad's face tightened. You're giving a $280,000 property to Ethan instead of your own son? Grandpa didn't move. Michael, I spent 42 years working as a plumber. I bought that duplex with money I earned through hard work. I fixed every leak, replaced every roof, found every tenant and paid every bill myself. He looked at me. Ethan understands what it means to build something with your own hands, because he has done the same thing. He didn't ask anyone to rescue him. He didn't need a co-signer. He built a business, hired employees, and earned every contract he has. Dad argued that Tyler had been trying to build a business too. Grandpa looked at him and simply said, "Trying isn't the same as building. Ethan has results. Tyler has excuses." Tyler's face turned red. "So that's all you think of me?" Grandpa sighed. "I love you, Tyler. But loving someone doesn't mean rewarding their bad decisions." He paused. "I'm not leaving this duplex so your father can sell it to pay off your debts." The words hit everyone at the table. Grandpa knew about the loan. He knew Dad expected to inherit the property. He knew exactly why. Dad stood up, angry. "You're punishing me." "No," Grandpa replied. "I'm rewarding the grandson who earned my respect." Dad turned toward me. "You've been manipulating him." I stood up and looked him directly in the eyes. I didn't even know about the duplex until Grandpa told me after the reunion. I never asked for it, and I never tried to influence his decision. He kept it private because it was his choice to make, not mine. Mom quietly asked if everyone could calm down and talk things through, but Grandpa shook his head again. Grandpa looked around the table and said, "Everything has already been signed, and if anyone decides to challenge my will, every major asset I own will go to the Dayton Plumbers Union Scholarship Fund instead." That was the end of the argument. Nobody had anything else to say. Tyler stood up, walked out without a word, and a few moments later we heard his BMW start and leave the driveway. Dad and Mom left soon after. The entire family dinner ended in complete silence. Only Grandpa, Uncle Kevin, Aunt Susan, Rachel, and I stayed behind. Rachel gave a sad smile and said, "He's right." Uncle Kevin nodded. Michael spent years protecting Tyler from the consequences of his own choices. After everyone was gone, Grandpa and I cleaned up the kitchen together. When we finished, he looked at me and smiled. "You doing okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." He nodded back. "Then go home. You've got a business to run." The weeks after that were difficult, but not surprising. Dad barely spoke to Grandpa. Mom tried several times to convince him to change his decision, but he refused. Tyler called once, but Grandpa didn't change his mind. Not long after that, Tyler's big commercial real estate deal fell apart, and the loan officially went into collections. Dad's credit took the hit, and refinancing the house was no longer possible. Then something unexpected happened. Tyler got a sales job at a Chevrolet dealership. Mum called me upset and said, "He has a degree. He shouldn't be selling cars." I reminded her that there was nothing wrong with honest work. Funny enough, Tyler was actually good at it. Within a few months, he was earning steady commissions and finally making payments on his own debt. We still weren't close, but for the first time, he was handling his own responsibilities instead of expecting someone else to save him. Dad started changing slowly too. One afternoon, he texted me, "Saw one of your Barrett mechanical trucks on the road today. Looks professional." It wasn't an apology, but it was the first real acknowledgement he had ever given my work. I simply replied, "Thanks, Dad." Grandpa and I settled into a Sunday morning routine, sitting on his porch with coffee. Sometimes we talked about business. Sometimes we talked about nothing important at all. Barrett Mechanical kept growing. We finished the hospital project on schedule, then won 2 more commercial contracts. I hired more managers, expanded the company, and eventually reached a point where everything didn't depend only on me. Rachel became one of the people I was closest with in the family. She started bringing her son over to see Grandpa, and one afternoon she admitted that she saw me more like a brother than Tyler had ever been. I didn't know how to respond, so I just laughed and handed her another plate during lunch. Through all of this, I kept driving the same old pickup truck. I could have bought something newer, but I never felt like I needed to. Every dent reminded me where I came from, and every mile reminded me that success isn't about what you drive. It's about what you create. Looking back now, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. For years, I wanted my parents to recognize my worth. I thought becoming successful would finally earn their approval, but I learned something much more important. I didn't need it anymore. Grandpa believed in me long before I ever signed a multi-million-dollar contract. Eventually, I learned to believe in myself the same way. I was never the family's first choice. I was the backup plan. The son with the cheap picture frame on the staircase. But while everyone else was waiting for potential to turn into something, I was quietly building a life one job at a time. In the end, Grandpa didn't leave me that duplex just because I was family. He gave it to me because I lived by the same values he spent his entire life following. Work hard, keep your word, take responsibility, build something real. That inheritance was never just about a property. It was proof that character matters more than appearances. The biggest lesson I took from everything was simple. Never let the people who underestimate you decide your value. Let them chase titles, status, and easy success if that's what they want. Keep working. Keep building. In the end, results speak louder than opinions, and eventually the truth becomes impossible for anyone to ignore.